Bam, we're live, just like that. Hello and welcome to the studio. Pleasure to have you here. I'm gonna need you to do me a huge favor and just let me know over in that live chat over there, can you hear me, can you see me? It doesn't matter what I do, how much I prep for these things, something technical always happens to Tish, always. I'm not much of a techie, you might not know that about me, but I manage. But something always happens. So if I know you can hear me and you can see me right now, then I'm ready to roll. I've got a really good one here for you in this live stream. It's been a minute since I've done my last live here on YouTube. Of course, my Academy members will know that I go live every week for the Academy. But doing a public live, it's been a little while. So I've missed you. It's good to be back. And today I've got some cool stuff to talk to you about. We're going to be painting a little landscape here, carrying on with a little work that I've been chipping away at. And I'm going to make some changes to this painting and talk to you about the process, some of the things that I'm thinking about, some cool techniques. And of course, I'm here to answer your questions. So go ahead and hit me up in that live chat. There will be a little bit of a delay here, but if I know you can hear me and you can see me, we'll be good to go. Yes, awesome. Hey, thank you, Jackal. Awesome. Okay, it looks like you can hear and see me. Yes to both, says Erlinda. Awesome. Now, one thing, if we can just do something, this is what we do over on my Academy, right? In the live chat, if you type in 3 capital Qs, right, like a QQQ, sometimes that stands out and I'll see your question because as I monitor that, I'm painting and I'm juggling, I'm doing all this stuff at once. But if I can see that chat, that question stick out, then I've got a better chance of answering that. My goal here in the next hour is to answer as many questions as possible, and hopefully I don't get to miss any. Hopefully I catch every single one. Now, just real quick, could you also, oh, no, we'll talk about that at the end. I'll mention something at the end. Okay. Never mind. Okay, so let me just run through my different cameras, make sure everything's working here, and I'll show you the wide angle and the close-up of what we're doing here. Check this out. Okay. So I live in a pretty beautiful part of the world. I live in the South Island of New Zealand. And this scene here can be found just outside of the Homer Tunnel on your way to Milford Sound. And this iconic peak here, I paint this mountain all the time because I just love this mountain. This is Mount Talbot right here in this beautiful fjordland type landscape. It's got a real Norwegian, almost European vibe, but this is like the quintessential New Zealand South Island type of landscape. And I find myself just so drawn to these subjects. Now, what I want to do is I'll show you some of the reference, but here I'll give you another little view of this. And I'll get me out the way so you can actually see the dang thing. How about that? There we go. And so this is what I'm going to be working on. Now, I'm pretty happy overall with the scene, but it's got some things that are a bit funky going on with it. And I want to talk to you about a couple of the changes that I'm going to make. I don't have any idea if they're going to work, but I've got an idea about how to make this scene just a little bit more intriguing. Let's put it that way, using a bit of artistic license. But let me show you something cool here. Let me show you the reference material that I'm working with. Now, over here, this is a kind of a typical reference file. One thing you'll notice is that whenever I'm painting using photographs, there's no one photograph that I'm copying, but it takes a multitude of images to get the information and then to put the painting together. And so my Academy members over on Tish Academy, whenever I upload a module for the landscape painting course or any of the other courses that are available, I provide this high-res reference material in case you want to have a go at painting this stuff. So I don't know about you, but I thought this was a pretty dang cool scene. And there was some really cool stuff going on with it. Now, my scene's pretty similar. I'll give you that. It is pretty similar, but I have made some changes compositionally. And as I said, not totally happy with it. There's one big move I want to make in this live stream that hopefully will make it a little more engaging, a little more interesting. Oh, by the way, another just quick aside. Super chats are available, but you don't have to super chat if you don't want to, okay? That's not why I'm here. But if you do, that also helps it stand out, okay? So I won't miss your question. So I'm just saying, no pressure, just saying, if you want to go ahead and super chat me, go for it, and then that would help it stand out as well. But I see I've got a couple of questions, so we'll get straight over into that, and I'll also talk to you about the colors that I'm using. Okay, who do you look up to? Oh goodness, Brian, that is such a cool question. I look up to so many people. You know, I'm a big believer that everybody is my superior in some way. Everybody is my superior in some way. I learn something from everyone. I even learn a lot from toddlers. I tell you what, they teach you how to be free, man. Having a toddler now myself, my son's 2.5, he's teaching me stuff every single day. But okay, but I think the gist of your question is maybe artistically, who do I look up to? And so right now we're going through a series of art heroes over on the Academy, and in the Paint FOMO exclusive newsletter with Tisch Academy, we talk about a new art hero every single week, and I talk about their work and why I love their work and what are some of the things that really inspire me about what they do. And so this week I'm doing a big article on Albert Bierstadt. So I look up to artists from the past, I look up to old masters, and people that really have just perfected their craft, so to speak. They're painters that have captured something that is just rare. You know, and I'm talking like insane skill, but creating stuff that is just so jaw-dropping and inspiring. Most of my heroes are traditional oil painters, you know, it's people like Bierstadt, and then other artists like Anders Zorn and also Soroya and John Singer Sargent, people like that. So there are too many art heroes on my list to name. Oh, Balsam Art. No question, just grateful for all you do. Oh, bless you. Thank you so much. That's very kind. Heidi Blumenschein, can you say what computer do you find useful for your job? That's an interesting question. At the moment, I'm using a Mac Studio, but not being a computer guy or a techie, I'm probably not the best one to answer that question. So I'll just go ahead and shift me over here. Let's talk about the colors I'm using, and we'll get into a bit of painting here, shall we? Okay, so this is pretty much my standard palette with a couple of extenders here. And at the moment, I'm actually working on quite a big painting of the horses in the river valley. If you're following me over on Instagram, then you'll actually see that as a work in progress. So this is a palette that I've been using for that project. And so there's a few colors here that you don't necessarily need, but let me just give you a little bit of an overview here about some of the things that I'm using, okay? So here I've got burnt umber, raw umber. Now, I don't often include the raw pigments, but recently I've been playing with them, and I'm finding I'm getting some really interesting results. They handle in a very similar way, but they got just a slight different color note to them. Then I've got burnt sienna and raw sienna. I've got yellow ochre, two different whites. That's really important to have those two different whites. I've got titanium white and Kremnitz white. Now, titanium white's very opaque. If you're not careful, it can make everything appear chalky and almost pastel-y in a way. And so there was a way that the old masters, like Bierstadt, like Sargent, like Zorn, there was a way that the old masters created that buttery, voluminous paint. And as they were working it with a bristle brush, it just had some texture and some real guts to it. But they weren't blowing out that tonal dynamic. There was a subtle kind of elevation of those tonal values. Now, the thing that helps in that regard is the Kremnitz white, the lead-based white. I'm getting reports from a lot of people saying, I can't get that in my country, it's banned. Yes, it's banned here in New Zealand too. It's really annoying. Like, you're allowed so many other things that are toxic and will kill you, but no, you can't have artist paint that's got a little bit of lead in it. But anyway, I think if you order online, the company can ship it to you without there being any problem. So, and I don't think you're doing anything illegal by doing that. That's what I'm going to be doing here, is I'm going to be getting it shipped in directly from Blue Ridge. And by the way, all the colors that I'm using here are Blue Ridge handmade oil colors. I love these guys. They're absolutely the best in my opinion. It's all I use professionally. So then here I've got some cadmium lemon, some Indian yellow, I've got some cadmium red light, permanent crimson, quinacridone magenta, ultramarine blue, cobalt teal, and I've forgotten the phthalo green. Don't know if I'll need it today, but it's nice to have on the palette. Let's get a bit of that out. So you don't need all of these colors. There is a landscape set of what I'd consider my essential colors over on the Blue Ridge website. But the ones that you could probably do away with might be a couple of those earth colors and maybe permanent crimson, maybe Indian yellow. But this palette really is based on the CMYK system. And that's not all you need more, but as long as I hit those color notes, then I've got a really good range to achieve some high chroma, but also push my colors around. If all of this is confusing you, don't worry about it. If you're new to oil painting, no worries. I can take some time to explain that, but I break this down in full over on my academy as well with some of those extended courses, like the Fundamentals of Oil Painting course. Okay, anyway, over here, CMYK. What is CMYK? You open up any printer at home, and you'll find those colors, cyan, magenta, yellow. This is where we have cyan, magenta, yellow. So these are as close as possible to that CMYK for black. And what I use for black, you notice there's no black out here. I just mixed up a little bit of burnt umber and a little bit of ultramarine blue. That's what I use. Okay, so I did answer Heidi's question, didn't I? I use a Mac Studio. I needed to get more memory, and for some reason I bought the lower model. Don't know what I was thinking. Anyway, got another question here from Luis. How do I email you for some questions that I have if I'm not able to join the academy? No worries, Luis. You can get in touch with me through my website. There's a contact form there. You can also message me on Instagram. I read every message that gets sent to me on Instagram. That's a couple of ways that you can do it. And we'll be happy to help. Okay? Cool. Awesome. It's great to see so many people here. This is awesome. This is awesome. Okay, so let me talk to you about a couple of things that I thought were missing from this. So pretty happy with the composition overall, but there's one thing that I'd love to add, and that is a little bit of clear water. I don't know about you, but whenever I see clear water in a scene, it just makes it a little more inviting. Now, you might have noticed from the thumbnail, before I went live that it wasn't this painting, it was a different painting. But we haven't finished this painting yet, so maybe later when the live stream's up, I'll go ahead and update the thumbnail with this painting. But I'm thinking also about making this painting a much bigger one. We'll go over here, mix up a bit of color. I'm going to talk to you about this color. I always get questions about this color here that I'm about to add. People are like, why would you do that? This is quinacridone magenta and a little bit of Cremnitz white. I do this because this color is going to stick out like a sore thumb. And this is going to annoy and trigger some people. I know that. That's all right. But one thing I want to do is I want to come in here and I want to add a little bit of water to the scene, but I want to see it. I really want to see it right away as a shape here in the foreground and the way this is going to look. So how are we going to do this? And then once we've done that, we'll go ahead and add some colors to the sky, start working my way forward. Again, any questions, go ahead and hit me up in that chat. But there's this phenomenon you get here up in the highlands, up in Fjordland as well, called tarns, right? And they're these little frozen puddles or thawed out puddles, but it's snow melt and they form these really beautiful little reflecting pools. I think we could use one right in here, just hanging. But it means I might have to change the shape. And one thing I want is I want this to stick out. I want to be able to see it. So I'm not worried about the magenta at all because I've actually used a bunch of magenta to achieve that dusty mountain violet in the distance. I've just used a lot of that. So I can go ahead and blend this color in with any of the colors that I'm adding over the top. Now, one thing that I do is I put my paintings up for what I call cook time, right? The idea is got to have time to cook, time to simmer. I don't always knock it out of the park on every painting, rarely. So sometimes you just need to put it aside. You got to think about these things. You got to let that idea simmer a little bit. And this has been sitting up there on the little sideboard here in the studio for the last few months. And I'm just thinking, what could I do to push this painting into another zone? What would help here? So I'm thinking, yeah, that's it, some water. We'll just see if we can pull this off. I'm going to have to change the shape of the landscape. But I think just a little bit of a pond here could help. I got another question here, one from Rhiannon. Andrew, when doing a glaze, can you mix semi-transparents and transparents to make a new color? Yes, absolutely. So you'll notice that ultramarine blue is semi-opaque, right? But I'll use that for glazes all the time, along with things like transparent yellow oxide and transparent red oxide. So, and this is one of the big reasons for using Cremnants, because if you need something that's a little bit lighter, but you need that transparency, then the Cremnants is there. It's beautifully transparent. It's not like that heaviness of titanium white. You try to use titanium for a glaze, good luck. Even the thinnest amount is so opaque, you don't really get any of that information back through it. But the lead white, that works really well. But absolutely, you can use semi-opaque and transparent colors. Good question. Hello, Raven, how are you? Tarns are amazing, says Nikki, and bitterly cold to swim in. Yeah, I'd much rather paint them than swim in them, but I've been telling myself I'm going to try this Wim Hof thing this winter and chip the ice off the Otago Dam and get in there for a little while and just see how that works. But I haven't worked up the guts yet. So Tish don't like to be too cold, you know what I mean? I'm a little bit colder now because I got less up top. But yeah, it's winter down here. It might be summer where you are if you're in the northern hemisphere watching this, but down under, it's pretty cold. So it's nice painting a little summer scene here. So I'm thinking that this zone right here and going off the edge of the canvas down here, that could all be water, which will mean that I've effectively changed the topography here. And I'm going to flatten this out. Rather than being a berm like what I'm seeing over in my photographic reference, where's a good photo that shows you what I'm talking about? You can see here it's quite hilly. Rather than that, I think what we're going to do is have something that's a little bit flatter that will allow for these rocks and this little pond, this nice little bit of reflection. The beauty of that, though, is, you know, with this elevated reflecting pole, I'm going to get to reflect that mountain. That'd be pretty cool. All right. Now, I've made that as a note. And you might have also seen this on the horse. I had so many people asking, what's with the pink makeup on one of those horses? What's going on there? I'll do this all the time. I'll make a note. So every time I see it, it'll be glaringly obvious. If I don't get to it in this session, then that paint right there is chill. It's going to get covered up. Maybe a little bit it will show through. But I've got little pops of red here and there showing through from the imprimatura, right? So whenever I start a paint, you don't know what imprimatura is? Okay. Here, check this out. I'll go and get a panel. Here's one I prepared earlier. So everything that I'm painting on has got this kind of color on it. Let me go ahead and go bigger view here. Out the way. There we go. Everything's got this kind of color on it. It's a mixture of burnt umber and burnt sienna. I rubbed that back thoroughly. And by the way, this is triple primed, oil primed linen adhered to a board. This is one of my homemade jobbies. I love working on the homemade stuff. It's a little bit rougher than those store-bought ones, but I love it, man. Preparing my own boards is one of my favorite things to do. I become involved in every part of the process. But when you frame these up and that edge is covered up, it's just a gorgeous thing to work on. But they do pretty good. It's just linen adhered to a piece of plywood with PVA glue. And then on the back, I prime those pretty thoroughly with coats of what's called Zinsser 123. Right, and it's an all-purpose kind of primer, and you sand that back, and then I spray painted the back. So they always end up looking kind of weird because it's whatever spray paint I had left in the studio. Normally it's stuff that I use for picture framing. Anyway, so that imprimatura is what shows through in any gaps in your brushwork. And it adds a real warmth and vitality to your paintings, particularly landscape paintings. Now, why an orangey red? Why an earthy red like this? Well, it just so happens that this orangey red is a nice complementary opposite to a lot of the bluey greens that we're using that you'll see here in this painting. So having that little pop, it just causes everything to be that much more vibrant. Pretty cool, pretty fun. Can you do your imprimatur with just oil paint, no mediums or solvents? Yeah, I actually do use a little bit of liquid and a little bit of solvent. You can do it with just oil paint. In fact, Virgil Elliott does it with just oil paint and just almost dry brushing that into his canvas, working that into his canvas, because he's pretty adamant about not using much of any medium at all. He just uses oil paint. So, I mean, that approach clearly works. For me, I prefer to use a little bit of liquid original and a little bit of solvent, and then I paint it on there, and then I rub it off. Like as much of it I remove as possible. I let it fully dry before painting. But the other thing is some people paint straight into it while it's still wet, and that works too. But it depends on the type of effect you want and the process that you feel comfortable with. For me, this is such a simple, easy process. It's just part of my preparation for the boards that I make. Okay, I'm going to get a couple of brushes out. And by the way, I'm using a whole bunch of brushes here. They're all rosemary coated. This is actually my plein air kit. And so here, I'm going to be using some daggers, some filberts, some little tiny filberts. Here I've been using some synthetics. These are all short handles. Again, it's my plein air kit. This either goes in this nifty pouch here, or I'll give you a wider view, or I just chuck these little brushes in my pochade box. So, and shout out to Dan Spoke, who's here in the house. Looking forward to getting that pochade box, brother. Can't wait to try that one. Speaking of pochade boxes. And by the way, a shout out to all my Academy members here too. There's a ton of you here in the live chat. That's awesome. It's so cool to hang out. I'm going to be seeing you again tomorrow for our exclusive live stream on the Academy. We're going to be carrying on with portraits tomorrow. Can't wait. Okay, cool. So I've got my reference material over here on the iPad. So I'll be referring to that. Again, if you want any high quality reference material, it's all part of that Academy membership. Anyway, I know I keep going on about it. I'm sorry, but I just think it's the coolest thing ever. So let's go ahead and mix up a little bit of this sky color, and we'll get on with it, shall we? Now, two mediums that I've got here on the palette. I've got some liquid impasto medium, and I've also got some liquid original. Marie wants to know, Zinzer 123 is applied. Why? Please elaborate. It's only applied to the back, and that's just to completely seal it as a unit, because plywood and various types of board, they do absorb moisture over time. So this is just one way that you can cheaply, effectively, quickly seal the back, and then I spray paint over the top of it, so then it's really sealed. And I spray over it with an enamel Rust-Oleum spray paint, and it forms a really hard shell, and it's impervious to moisture at that point. And so you don't get any of that warping. But your painting can still dry, obviously. So it's just got, on one side, it's raw ply with PVA glue, linen stuck down, then I prep the back, if that makes sense. So it's something that I've been playing with for a while, but so far so good. We've come up with a system that works, I think. Good question. Okay, so sky color. Now, ordinarily with skies, I start off right there with the Cremnitz white. I get out a bunch of that stuff. I'm going to be using a bristle dagger here. And I'm going to be using some liquid impasto and a little tiny bit. You can use both the impasto and the original at the same time. It just depends on the kind of flow that you're going for. But I'm working on a ratio of 1 part medium to 3 parts paint, or at about 25%. Now, working down in the sky, when we look at the reference material, you'll notice that the sky, pretty bright, pretty blue, very typical here of the South Island on a bright day. Now, I'm going to be mixing a combination of blues to achieve this, and I'm thinking that we can get pretty close with our ultramarine cobalt teal. But I don't ever just take one blue, add that to the white and go, yeah, close enough, that'll do it. This is what I call one-dimensional color. I want to add more color to it to just make things interesting. So I'm going to add a little bit of cobalt to that. Now it starts to round out that color a little bit more, starting to achieve a little bit of that sky look. And then if I add a touch of cobalt teal, which is a really greeny blue, then it starts to hit that zone, very reminiscent of the mountain landscape down here in New Zealand. Now, of course, it depends on where you're looking in the sky. The sky changes color slightly. So closer to the horizon, we're looking through more particulates, we're looking through more water vapor, and the sky, you might see, is slightly grayer, maybe slightly greener, but certainly lighter towards that horizon. I'll make a couple of tentative marks just to make sure I'm on the right track. And if I'm not, I go back to the palette, mix up a bit more color, Try again. Just a few little strokes of color, just make sure that I hit it. Yes. Now, once I've achieved that right color note, one thing I love about skies, and I follow, so someone was asking earlier about art heroes. Who do I look up to? One artist is Edgar Payne. I love the chunkiness of his skies. And a type of look that I'm going for in my painting is painterly, yet detailed and realistic. How do you do that? It's like this impossible happy medium. But I've been working on this technique for years. And again, I'm not going to call it my style. It's just something I'm trying to achieve with the look of painting. And sometimes I get close and hit it, but sometimes I don't. It's a work in progress, let's put it that way. But it's something that I like and really enjoy is that heavy painterly texture. But when you step back from your painting, you can see that everything gels together. Do you ever geek out about that magical moment? You ever looked at masters' work in museums and galleries? I was always looking at the old masters going, how do they do it? I look up close at a Hans Heissen, and it's an absolute dog's breakfast. It is a mess. How can you tell what's going on? But you step back and far out if he didn't nail it. Incredible. QQQ, do you have any landscape tutorials that are 100% uncut? No jump cuts or fades. Would love to follow along with a complete one-to-one for everything. Detective, that would be 100 or a 200-hour tutorial. Do you got that kind of time? It would save me time on editing. Let's save my editor some time. But I don't currently have that, no. But you know, I think we might be thinking very similarly here. I think on a little landscape, we might be able to do it, but it would be a very long tutorial. But we could work on something like that. We have actually discussed that and have been thinking about that. So bear with me. Currently, the answer is no. Unfortunately, I don't have anything like that, but maybe soon. So stay tuned for that. The best way, by the way, to find out about any of my material or teaching or whatever I'm up to is to subscribe to my email list. And you'll find a little subscription form on the contact page on my website. So and my website's about to get a complete overhaul. But if you sign up there, then you'll be on my mailing list, and I'll get in touch with you when stuff happens. So if we do release that anytime soon, then you'll be amongst the first to know. Okay, cool. You talk too much, says Amar. Well, dude, you can either leave or you can mute me. Okay. This is how I roll. Don't like it? Sorry. Where's my moderator? I do have that kind of time, says Detective. Did I miss a mention? What kind of brushes do you use? Marie, what I'll do after the live stream is gone, I'm going to post a link below where you can get your hands on my brushes. So I'll post a link to my Rosemary & Co. What we call the wish list. If you have a wish list of brushes that you want to try with oil paint, I think this has got some of my essentials on there, and it's stuff that I'm using currently for little works. Now, one thing I love about skies, let me go ahead and get you a little bit more of a detail close-up. And here we go. Excellent. Let's go ahead and get another quick little camera angle here. And I want to show you some of these techniques just a little bit closer up. All right, there we go. That'll stabilize here in a second. I've got this thing on a boom arm, so it might be a little bit shaky to begin with. Balsam says, lol, I moderate Florent Fire's live chats and enjoy blocking trolls. Yeah, Balsam, in the next live stream you might be. It's all right, they're gone. So, QQQ, does your dad still paint despite being a full-time bronze sculptor artist? Ollie, my father hasn't painted in many years that I know of. He's mainly just a bronze dude. And He's very good at that, but that seems to be where he spends most of his time and focus. But yeah, he can paint, but I think he's primarily a sculptor. He'll be back on the podcast at some point soon. All right. Now, I'm going to go a little bit darker towards the top of the sky. Bit more ultramarine blue, bit more cobalt blue. And one thing I love about this is a bristle dagger, right? Now, yeah, okay, I know it's got my name on it, the Tish, okay. But it is pretty cool for a nice painterly effect and picking up some of this texture. One thing I love is strategic texture. We talk about this at length in my landscape course that's about halfway through now over on Tish Academy. You can catch all of the past installments and modules of that course. But there's one of those modules where we talk about texture. And texture is something, as we're building up dimension in a painting, this can really drive a lot of the three-dimensionality and effects like lighting, getting, you know, bold, luminous colors, but really super pinging, that's a technical term, yes, but pinging highlights. And one thing that helps a highlight really stand out is having a bit of dimension to it, a bit of texture there. Now, I'm not talking like big, chunky, distracting texture, but you can see here from this angle, and the way that I have my lights mounted in the studio, it really does pick up that texture so I can strategically build it into a painting. As I work into this, as these layers of paint dry, I can then come back over the top and dry brush in even more lighter value, more light tone, and create more of a strong highlight. So it's a pretty fun little technique. But the dagger has that versatility of that broad side. So as I'm making these small strokes, it's creating these channels and furrows with those bristles. But then I can then just come with just the end and just adjust the stroke that I just made. Without completely smooshing it down and blending it out, just a little bit of adjustment can help. Why do you block in with large bristles and detail with small synthetic and not block in with large synthetics and not with bristles? Oh, Luis, that's a really interesting question. So sometimes, yes, I will block in with large bristles. But one thing that I'm thinking about is, you know, again, with that texture, you can still block in with bristles and still have a smooth kind of painting, depending on the medium that you're using, depending on, you know, how hard you're pressing, how much you load that brush. So I'm working pretty thin with the block end. With these smaller panels, though, it's a slight variation on my process. With bigger paintings, it's a 1, 2, 3, a block in, a modeling, then a detail. But then on these little ones, it's just 2 passes generally. It's a block in with modeling in that block in, so I get a lot of information down. This is my first layer of paint here, actually. And so I'm going over the top with what could be considered detail. So that's a really great question. But one general rule of thumb that I have is that if it requires thickness, so if it's an area of lighter tone, then generally I'll use some bristle brushes. But if it's in an area that is darker, some shadowed areas, like let's say down in some of the depths of the shadow of those rocks, then I'll use something like a synthetic. So my rule of thumb is thick highlights, thin shadows. And that helps create some more of that three-dimensionality. And just something that I learned by watching old masters. You know, well, I haven't watched any old masters paint because they ain't around anymore. But you know what I mean, looking at some of the originals that are hanging in the museums around the place. Highly recommend going into some art galleries and museums and spending some time there and seeing what you can pick up. You'll be amazed just looking at the masters, what you can pick up by just looking at their paintings. All right. Andrew, have you tried the MA oil and acrylic brushes for Photoshop and Procreate? No, I haven't yet, Elijah. No, I'm still hooked on my Groot brushes made by Nikolai Groot. I quite enjoy those. They're pretty reminiscent of oils. But again, I'm a bit of a technophobe. I manage with the technical stuff, but my Photoshop drawing, whilst it's come a long way since I first started, I still am not an expert in the program, and I think just learning a new thing or getting a new brush pack, it's sometimes I find this stuff a little bit overwhelming. So I like the groove that I'm in at the moment, but I might have to try those at some point. So you can see here I've just added some nice little feathery clouds, just whisking those with just the end of those bristles. And I love the way some of these clouds pull apart. I'm seeing some evidence for this in my photographic reference, but I am going to be using a little bit of artistic license and just adding whatever shapes I think work best for the painting, not necessarily copying the photo. At the end of the day, it's about the painting. And whoever ends up with this painting, or if it ends up on my wall, you know, no one's going to be looking at that going, no, it doesn't really look like a photo now, does it? You know, you'll be amazed how much artistic license you can get away with before somebody starts wagging their finger at you going, it didn't look like that. You know, there's no rules when it comes to this stuff, so paint whatever you think looks right to the eye. Question from Zach. Hello from Saratoga Springs. Hello. Do you force yourself to paint a scene with bad lighting, or just a bad composition to challenge yourself? Do you think this is an effective way to quickly improve? Wow, Zach, that's a really good question, mate. That's a really good question. So I don't generally force myself to paint from a bad composition, but one thing is, you know, pretty certain with what I do. Like, I'm not photographing the landscape. I'm not gathering reference with composition in mind. I'm just looking for what I call the seed of the idea. Okay, as long as it's got the seed of the idea, if I plant that into the fertile ground, that's going to grow into an awesome composition. But I got to water it with some good ideas, right? Okay, so what am I talking about here? When I'm in the field, what I'm looking for is atmosphere, light, texture, some differentiation, something different with the tone or contrast. I might see the side of a barn and think, that looks freaking cool, I'll put that in a landscape, but it's in a field surrounded by trash. You know, like, so sometimes, you know, when you find a photograph, as you might know, it might not be the perfect thing, and you might not go, oh, far out, okay, I'll paint exactly this. So that rarely happens for me, that I'll find a photograph and then really just, okay, I'm all in, I'm copying this one. This scene came very close, mind you. It did come very, very close. I mean, it's beautiful. You could get away with painting that pretty much straight up. But one thing that I look for is I look for these little things that break my composition rules. I'll give you a couple of the rules now. I don't like putting anything directly in the middle, vertical middle or horizontal middle, or right in the center of the painting, because I feel this weakens the composition. What I go for is asymmetrical balance. Now, I talk about this all over the place in my critique videos that you'll find a whole bunch of those. I think we're up to 38 critique videos now. Look, there's hundreds of hours of content right now at Tisch Academy, but all my critiques are there. And this is something we talk about a lot, is composition. And so I'm going for asymmetrical balance. Now, often when we start out, when we're beginning our oil painting journey, we think balance by putting things right in the middle, right in the center. So you've got an equal space left and right. When we look at this photograph, for instance, here, you'll notice that that rock in the center foreground is right in the middle. Now, after talking to New Zealand legend, amazing plein air painter, John Crump, he would call these things stumbling blocks. You're putting literally obstacles in the way for your viewer that they're going to trip over as they're walking through your landscape. So one thing I like to do is kind of move these things to the side and have maybe a little more weight on one side and then balance that with something else, going for asymmetrical balance. So I try to avoid center lines. That's one of the rules. I also try to avoid putting things on the edges or things in the corners that are going to draw too much attention away. It doesn't mean nothing goes on the edges or the corners. It just means if I have a tree, it doesn't go like right there on the edge of the composition, for instance. Like if I had a tree, it wouldn't go like right there as a stripe right on the edge of the painting. And so one of my rules is you're either in or you're out. I either bring it into the composition, I have it there as a feature, or I remove it totally. So we do talk a lot about composition. It's a huge field of study. And as I said, we're 38 critique videos in, and there's still more to talk about with composition. But that's a really good, that is actually a really good idea for a video, In fact, I might put that as a challenge to some of my Academy members and say, give me your worst photograph. Let's see what we can do. That'll be fun. Or it'll be terrible. We'll see. Can I mix cobalt teal from phthalo green and a yellow? Or is it impossible to mix? Nicholas, that's a great question. You can mix it. In fact, my buddy Samuel Earp does mix his own variation of cobalt teal. Of course, I give him heaps about that because it's just not the same. But you can mix it. I think his mix, if I'm not mistaken, is phthalo green, ultramarine blue, and titanium white, I think. I could be wrong. I have heard of phthalo blue, phthalo green, and titanium white as well, making a pretty good equivalent. But one thing you'll notice, I use what I call single source pigments. That means for every tube that I get, it's got one pigment in there. It is that stuff in there. So it's just burnt sienna. So this is iron oxide in that tube. Cobalt teal, same. It's permanent green 50, I think, or it might be PB28. I get my chemical codes confused, but it's one chemical compound, one pigment for that cobalt teal, rather than mixing a whole bunch. This allows you to just mix cleaner color on your palette. You might not pick it up straight away, but working with it after a while, you learn to kind of see that there are some differences in using cleaner color. So I do highly recommend getting your hands on a tube and just buy one tube and just try it. It could be a little bit expensive being cobalt, but you'll notice that it probably will go a very long way. And the thing about cobalt teal is it lasts a long time on your palette too. Some oil paints form a skin, but cobalt teal seems to last a very long time. I can get away without having to replenish it very often. So anyway, good question. Good question. Andrew, did you ever use blending techniques like dry brush to smooth out color transitions? All the time, Jose. All the time. What's the difference between using oleo gel or liquid, and at what stage would you use them? So Heidi, with that question, I would use oleo gel if I required more working time. Oleo gel is beautiful stuff. It's made by natural pigments, Rublev make it, and it's fumed silica mixed with linseed oil. In fact, I've got a little punnet of it right here. So this stuff here. It's a clear gel medium. It dries after about 3-4 days, around there. I use it at the same ratio at the utmost, 25%, but in my layers, my early painting layers, so the block end, some of the first layers of paint that I put down, I'm using only about 10% in those mixes. So with oleo gel, you have to adhere to that fat on lean principle. And so if you don't, it could lead to some issues. You will find if you use too much oleo gel that your painting can go a little bit rubbery. Yes, rubbery. So that's something to just keep an eye out for. Bear with me. I'm just going to adjust my camera, make sure you can see what I'm doing here. There we go. Good questions today. Thank you very much for all the questions. Oh, okay. Rhiannon's got a question here, and sorry, Gaz, and shout out to Gaz. How you doing, brother? About changing the scene, do I still adhere to 1:1.618? So Gaz is referring to the golden ratio, which is a ratio that states 1:1.618, found all over nature, found all over the human body, human face, all sorts of things. We look for it subconsciously. It's kind of how we recognize if something's aesthetically pleasing or not. It seems to be built into us psychologically. Really interesting mathematical phenomenon that's just found all over the place. So I use this all the time with composition, but if I'm changing up the composition, really what I'm looking for is just asymmetrical balance. But I'm gonna let you in on a little secret here. With these smaller paintings, I'm not too worried about composition. I know, shocker, but as long as there's nothing that's really standing out to my eye as bothering me, I'm not going to put anything dead center. I'm not going to put anything on the edge or bury a heavy element right in the corner that can't be alleviated with another mask somewhere else. So as long as I'm sticking to those rules, I don't really think about golden ratio for these little ones. Although I would hazard a guess to say that that mountain is probably at the ratio, okay? But here, when I made a change, is the ratio there? Not sure. As long as it's not right in the middle, I'm okay. But I do like that ratio. So when it does come time to paint this bigger, and a lot of these little paintings end up becoming, they're studies for some big works, and I like to work big. I can only do maybe 2 or 3 really big paintings a year. But I'm exploring what I think would make the best looking painting. I'm searching for that potential composition that's just going to be, you know, a knockout. So one thing I'll do is I'll probably load a painting like this up digitally and then start drawing over the top of it in Photoshop and tweaking the composition. And then playing with some of this furniture around the landscape, like rocks and water and plants and mountains and all sorts of light and shade. And just trying to work out what's going to be the best arrangement here. I'll leave the sky there for now. I want to start working in this mountain and start bringing it forward. And then once I get some of the mountain color down, just block in and establish this water here in the foreground. I think that could be pretty cool too. So we'll go ahead and work in a little bit of this. But I might go a little bit over time here because this happens with me in every live stream. I always burn through the time answering questions and hanging out that I don't get a lot of painting done. So it is good fun though. It is really good fun. So I'll probably go for an extra half hour. So if you had plans, better cancel. No, but it's good fun. Good fun hanging out with you. I'm glad you're here. And again, if I miss your question, then just go ahead and another way is just to highlight me or tag me in the question, like Itmar's done here. Maybe you have a discount code for of your brushes, deluxe set. I don't have a discount code that I know of, Itmar. Apologies for that, but maybe we can work on that. When considering the 1 part to 3, do you ever reduce the 1 part if your paint has more linseed oil in it? That's a really good question, Rhiannon. Again, with these oil paints, they're pretty consistent with the amount of oil in there. They do have a little bit of stabilizer. I know some artists really don't like that, but Eric Silver, who makes Blue Ridge oil paint, keeps that stabilizer to a medium. At minimum, it just makes it a little bit more workable. But I generally don't consider the oil content of the oil paint when adding medium. I just make sure that I don't go above that ratio when I'm mixing here on the palette. And so far, so good. It's kept me out of trouble. But that's a really good question. Okay, so if I missed your question again, apologies. I'm going to move on here to Heidi's. Is there another place I can buy your brushes other than Rosemary? Heidi, that's all that I know of for who stocks the brushes. I only use Rosemary & Co. brushes now. I have some older brushes that I'll use in my kit, but they're Rosemary & Co. pretty exclusively. And the reason is that I just can't find anybody that makes better brushes. They're awesome. All right. By the way, I should probably show you a palette shot now that I'm mixing some color over here. Let's mix some more color. So this violet color, I love the violets here in these mountains. Like this has got some really pinging violets. Check this out. Isn't that something? I swear I did not tweak the photo on this at all. I did not tweak the colors. It might have come out a little bit punchy from the camera settings, but this is pretty much what it looked like. It's pretty incredible. So to achieve that violet, I love, love, love quinacridone magenta. It's a really punchy color. A little bit goes a long way. But if you mix that with a touch of ultramarine blue, boom. I'm going to add a touch of liquid original to that. And now a little bit of cobalt blue. And we're getting close. Now the only thing I have to do is adjust that value with some Cremnitz white. And I think we're pretty close there. Let's have a go and see what that violet looks like on our mountain here. Balsam wants to know, what brand of impasto do I use? That one right there, Liquid Impasto. So again, that's an alkyd resin. It has very similar ingredients to the Liquid Original, I believe, although I don't know exactly what's in Liquid. I think it might even be a trade secret. Do you know what's in Liquid? I don't know what's in Liquid, but I do know it's an alkyd resin. And just a little bit of that helps me retain my brush work and those beautiful ridges in the paint as I work that with the end of the brush. So that said, by the way, if you don't have marks that you're happy with or a texture that you're happy with, while it's still workable, just continue to adjust that and continue to work with it, because once it sets up, then it's there. Now, I'm not sure if you can pick this up, but one thing that I like to go for is areas of what I call living color, right? So it's not just one color, it's got some interest to it. And I don't know about you, maybe I need to go and get my eyes checked, but when I'm looking at the landscape, I'm picking up different color notes, and my brain can't really work out, is it more red, is it more green? Is it more light, or is it darker? So having these little subtle variations make that surface appear like it's crawling or it's alive. What's going on here is, in some of these marks, I've got a little more teal coming through, so it shifts towards the green, and in other areas, I've got a little more magenta, so it starts to shift towards the violet, and then I'm playing these two off against each other. When you step back and look at this, the color kind of blends in your eye, but it still appears to be alive. And I learned this technique by looking at some reproductions of Edgar Payne's work. And so optical color mixing, it's called. It's a really effective technique to just create a bit more dimension and vibrancy in your painting, but also kick up that realism a little bit if you do it right. I'm not saying I'm doing it right. I'm just saying I'm having fun with it. But anyway, it's cool. It's cool. So I'm going to mix up a little bit more cobalt teal, a little bit more liquid impasto, and adjust my camera. Let's get over here to a wide shot. My block-in effectively created zones within the painting, so I'm really just following over the top of that block-in. And I'm allowing for a little bit of that color in the block-in to come through, and that's allowed for a third color note to play off against these other two that I'm adding over the top. And then with a little pop of imprimatura coming through, that little bit of burnt sienna. Now I've got something with some dimension. Now, allow me to just grab this other camera and make sure that you can see what I'm doing here. I'm flying solo here in the studio, so I got to adjust everything, make sure everything's working all by myself. There we go. Okay, let's get you a close-up. Here we go. There we go. That's brilliant. That's working. That's working. Question, where do you get your brush cases from, Louise? This was actually bought for me as a gift. I have no idea where this came from, but it's amazing. I want to find another one. I really want to find another one. This is, can you see in this little thing? It's like a foldable pouch that your brushes pack away beautifully. I'm sure you'd be able to find something online under foldable brush carrier. If not, I might have to order some and provide them for people, or find a way of making more, because those it's pretty cool. It's so handy working plein air. I actually strapped this to the bottom of my camera tripod that holds my pochade box. All right, so, So Ross has said, I've seen people use baby oil or other oils to clean synthetic brushes. That would work. Okay, yeah, paint thinner has harsh chemicals. The only thing you want to watch out for there with baby oil is that it doesn't dry. And so it could affect the drying time of your oil paint if it gets into your other colors. It could actually affect the drying time. So you want to make sure that you watch out for that. As long as you get it all out of your brush. Now, I've struggled with the solvents over the years. Let me tell you, I really have. And so I've switched now over to Gamsol, and I don't appear to have much of an issue with that. I used to use pure gum turpentine, but for some reason they've stopped selling pure gum turps here in New Zealand, which is really annoying. Really annoying. Walnut oil, says JF. Yeah, I've heard some great things about walnut oil. I haven't used it yet, but I might look into that. I might look into that. Now let's add a bit more. And so one thing that you'll notice when you're painting, particularly landscapes like this one, right? Notice here, I mean, this is a classic example in this scene, that whatever's furthest away in terms of value, it steps up quite considerably. So it's much lighter. It's also shifting towards those bluey violets. As we start to bring the scene forward, it gets darker and the color intensity kicks up a little bit. You know, there's still some of that blue there in that base, but it just becomes so much darker and heavier. You see that particularly with that hillside over on the left. But even with Mount Talbot here in the center, I've got to mix a slightly darker violet now to start bringing this mountain forward. Currently with my mountain, it's a little bit too same. So let's go ahead and make that one just a little bit darker here. Oh, but before I do, I might just get in that little mountain there. Oh, Justice said, everyone hit the like button. I forget to do this, you know, but if you do me a huge favor, if you're enjoying this live stream, if you're enjoying spending this time with me here in the studio, would you please hit the like button? Would you please hit that like button for me? It helps people find this. It helps YouTube and the algorithm go, oh, this sounded like a cool live stream. People liked it. They hit that like button. So if you do that for me, then it would help get this out to more people. And really, this is the only thing that's allowed me to grow online, is people sharing the stuff. It's not really much of anything I did, but it was just people going, hey, that was pretty cool. I'm going to share it. I'm going to hit the like button. I'm going to post it on my social media. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. So I appreciate it if you'd take a minute and do that. That would be amazing. Thank you very much. And thank you, Justice, for that shout out. Appreciate that. We have the son of Bob Ross in the house. What an honor to have you here, R. Ross 27. Is that true? I'll take your word for it, buddy. I'll take your word for it. I'm actually a huge fan of Bob Ross. He got so many people painting, and I think that's pretty cool. This is one of my favorite things to do in the world. And I think anybody that can share painting with people to the level that Bob Ross did, fantastic. That's just amazing. Ask me anything, says R. Ross. Okay. Okay, I'll think of a question. Do you own any original Bob Ross paintings? Aren't they worth millions now? Did you get any paintings off your dad? I've been trying to collect my dad's work. I've only got a few pieces. I'm going to read this comment here from Jason here. Hi, Andrew. I'm 18. I'm an 18-year-old and up-and-coming landscape artist, and your videos have really helped me develop my skills. Oh, awesome. Would you happen to have any advice to help me get started with an artist career? Okay, without going on too much of a rant, I'm worried that I might go on a rant right now, but whatever. I'll go with the flow. Yes, Jason, I got a few things that I could definitely mention. And really, whenever I come across a young person like yourself, and again, when I say that, I don't mean to patronize, but it takes me immediately back to when I was 18. When I was 18, I wasted too much time. I wasted time. I wasted time with the wrong people. I wasted time doing the wrong things. I just wasn't serious about my art. It wasn't until I was much older that that kicked in, and I looked back with regret going, why didn't I just get on with it? If I'd just gotten on with it and just really hit this as hard as I could, then I'd be so much further ahead now. And it's not that I, look at where I am now and I regret that. Like I'm only 41, right? Hopefully I get to paint for a few more years. Hopefully I'm about to enter into my best decade of painting. I think for some artists it's between 50 and 60. That's the sweet spot. So I'm getting there. So I got another 10 years of practice before I'm in the zone. But that said, I've known young people who were in the zone right out of high school and they were scary good with their art. Here's my advice to you, Jason, and anybody else, any other young person, or anybody else for that matter. If you're awake and alive and conscious today, you've got time to improve your art. What I'd start doing right now is drill the fundamentals. Okay? Even if you're a seasoned artist and you've been painting for decades, go back to the fundamentals. Like one thing about drilling fundamentals is you always unlock a new technique or a new understanding, even when you revisit it after you've been painting for decades. So that's number one, fundamentals, fundamentals, fundamentals. Start a habit of drawing every single day, just for a little while. Join the sketch endeavor. Now, when I say that, I feel like a little bit of a hypocrite because I haven't kept it up every day because so many different things going on. And now that I'm a dad, it makes it a little bit more of a struggle to get time in at the drawing board. Not that I'm using my son as an excuse, but you get it. Moms and dads out there, you know what I mean. So, but that said, if you can get some daily habit in for drawing, that would really help. Your ability to paint really is determined by your ability to draw. And the more you improve your skills in the sketchbook, the more that's going to pay dividends at the easel. So really practice your drawing skills. And then commit some time every day to bettering yourself with your craft, okay? This is really important. And one of the reasons I started my podcast is because I wanted to give people the edge with the art business and hear from professionals who make this work as a full-time thing. Right now you can listen to the podcast for free. It's out there. You can find it on Spotify and iTunes. It's called The Creative Endeavor, right? And The Creative Endeavor with Andrew Tischler. You search my name or search The Creative Endeavor, that podcast will come up. And so you can listen to that right now. There's like, oh gosh, we're up to episode 7, I think 69. We just uploaded episode 69 yesterday, which was with Carla Grace. Before that was Michael Klein. Before that was Dina Brodsky, who's just blown up on Instagram. It was amazing. But learn the business side of this as well. That's going to be really important. So the business side of art is something that a lot of people don't focus on. They just think that it's something that's going to happen. The thing is, with art now, you can do fabulously well, okay? And when I say that, I'm not talking monetarily. I mean, it could be that, but for me, my definition of success is if I get to paint every day, that's a plus. If I get to keep my team employed, we run a very small team, but a team nonetheless, if they still have a job, that's a plus. And if I feel good about what I'm creating creatively and I'm able to serve those who are following me, that's my definition of success, right? So, find that thing for you that makes you feel just alive and engaged, right? But learn the business side and define what success looks like for you. Set that as a goal. Frickin' go for it, dude. You've got the world in front of you and your whole life ahead of you. I'm very excited for you right now, Jason. I think this is going to be awesome. But one thing, again, might I stress, take it seriously. Some people are not going to like this, but maybe you're in a situation right now where the people that are hanging out with you or around you are not going to understand you as you start to take this a little more seriously, because you're not going to have the kind of time that they're going to have doing the stuff that they want to do. I would have ditched all my friends. If I could go back and do it over again, every single one of them. I'm not going to the bar to drink with you. That's not happening. I'm not playing the video games. I'm not watching the movies. I'm not hanging out with you. Okay, you might have the right guy, but you got the wrong decade. All right, I'm busy. Click. Okay, so you're probably going to lose some friends. But the cool thing is that when you step up, you're doing something you're passionate about, something you feel so good about, you're contributing, the right people start to show up in your life. Some of the best friends I've ever had, I have right now, and they're all artists. Most of them, you know, they're professional artists. One of my best buddies in the world is Samuel Earp. He's a professional full-time artist. And we don't get to hang out all the time, but when we do, we make the most of it. We go painting. We have an amazing experience, you know. So something to think about, Jason, but I hope that helps. But listen to the podcast. Try Tisch Academy for 7 days free. Listen to the business course that I'm uploading now. We talked about putting together a portfolio. You're going to need one of those. And building your website. You're going to need one of those too. So I've got 2 modules up now. And by the time we're done with that course, there's going to be like something like 25 different modules we've got to talk about for all the stuff you're going to need to think about as a professional. But check it out. That's why I do what I do, to help people like you. Good question. Thank you for that. And thank you for allowing me that little rant. I hope that was okay and I didn't upset anybody, all right? Anyway. Right, let's see. Do we have another question here? Oh, Ross says, our Ross 27 said if his dad was still alive, he would have been a fan. I appreciate that, man. I tell you what, he's a hero of mine. He's an absolute hero of mine. That's so cool. Yeah, he's left quite a legacy, hasn't he? Isn't it amazing who you meet on a YouTube live stream? How about that? That's cool. Bob Ross's son is in the house. That's cool. Do I have a favorite painter? Brandon asks. Yeah, so somebody asked me that earlier. I've got several. In fact, my desktop screensaver, let me see, let's go over to this one. And one of my favorites, I've been thinking about this painting in particular for so long. And a few of my students have already done master copies of this. I'm about to do a master copy of this one. But in terms of style, this is just my desktop wallpaper. This is Peter Mork Monstead, P-E-D-E-R. P-E-D-E-R, a Danish landscape painter. He had the perfect blend of painterly yet detailed. I love it. I absolutely love it. So, you know, he's definitely one of my favorites. Definitely. But I got so many art heroes that I look up to. It's crazy. Too many to name. Let's get in here just a little bit more texture. Now, one thing I want to get established during this little painting session is some of these highlights in here. I'm happier with the deeper violet. I think that's bringing the mountain a little further forward. But we could do just a touch more over on this backside. Let's go over here and mix a bit more of this. Ultramarine blue, cobalt teal, those three. I don't want to get too saturated. If it gets a little bit too blue or a little bit too much, sometimes just a touch of burnt sienna can just knock that in the head. Careful with that, though. A little bit goes a long ways. Thank you, Youssef. Appreciate that. Gary says, we still having a live stream tomorrow on the account. Of course we are, Gary. Of course. This is just a little extra freebie. Enjoy. Elijah, do you plan one day maybe making a digital brush set for Procreate and Photoshop that replicate the Tisch brushes? I would like to work with Nikolai on the Tisch brushes. I think that would be cool. But yeah, it might be an interesting Photoshop brush indeed. It is something that we've talked about. My question for you, though, Elijah, is you seem like a digital painter. Do you paint in oils, too? Because probably one thing's going to be better than the digital version is the real thing. Give it a shot. It's pretty fun. Now, if I've done this right, then hopefully the deeper value, darker value, and a little more intensity of color will allow this mountain to just step forward ever so slightly. Now, I don't know if some were expecting this, a finished painting in the in this live stream. My paintings take like dozens of hours at this scale to finish. There's a lot involved in this. But hopefully I've gone some way towards answering some of your questions, and you've enjoyed yourself. Maybe I've given you something to think about during this live stream. But again, if you've enjoyed it, then please do me a huge favor, hit that like button. If you haven't done that yet, please hit that like button. It really helps this get out to more people. Even if you're watching the replay, hit that like button right there. Appreciate it. Now, I will make these live streams a little bit more of a regular thing. I do really enjoy them. I've got several little paintings to work on to kind of study and work out. I'm going to get rid of that little highlight because I don't like, one of my compositional rules is lines that are a little bit too even. So if I see that, I go ahead and break that. Nature doesn't really like that even pattern. There are patterns for sure, but something that is just a continuous thing like a checkerboard or stripes, it can draw the eye and look a little distracting. Dan Spoke says he might get fired from sneaking into this live stream. Oh, bro. Oh, hey, I appreciate that, man. I appreciate you being here. That's epic. Please don't get fired. Please don't get fired. Although it might be it might be for a reason, and now you can like get to work on that Pashad box side hustle. You know what I mean? Bonding, is it okay to use alkyd on one layer and none of the layers on top? Yeah, so if you're going to start using a medium, Rhiannon, I would just keep using that medium so that they do adhere one to another. I would just keep using that. So sometimes you can create some disadhesion if something changes. But from my experience, liquid is pretty forgiving. It's pretty dang forgiving, so you should be okay. And one thing, I don't want anybody to freak out because a lot of people do get really worked up about this and almost like petrified that they've ruined their painting. But liquid is pretty forgiving. And it's pretty resistant to yellowing too, if you use it right. If you abuse it and use too much, then it can be a problem. So stick to that 25%, you'll be just fine. Of course you can use less, but that's kind of like the speed limit. It's like, yeah, of course you can drive slower and you're not going to get pulled over unless you're driving really slow in the fast lane. But if you go over that speed limit, you're probably going to get into trouble. So just treat it like the speed limit. Now again, I got this little rule that I have in my head, right? I keep saying this, zone to zone, edge to edge. what we've done in the block-in is we've defined the zones of the painting. And so I try to preserve that edge and the cleanliness and crispness of that edge. Some edges need to be sharper, some edges need to be softer. But right here with this mountain, I'm working it up with just the ends of that bristle, just right there. And if I go over the line ever so slightly, I might here and there just break up the edge ever so slightly. But if I step back, it looks relatively sharp. So that's what we're going for, just working right into that wet sky. Oh, my darling wife's in the house. And Hugo's here. Hey, boyo. Daddy's working. Oh, that's awesome. Hey, honey. I never have the pleasure of having my wife here on the live stream, so I just saw her in the chat. That's awesome. Excellent. I tell you what, Rachel helps me so much with my compositions. I don't think she's seen this one yet, but when I get home today, she might tell me, hey, you need to move that rock. That rock's bothering me. And I tell you one thing, I listen, because my wife has the eye. She knows exactly what makes a good composition. Some people just have that eye. Some people kind of miss it. Sometimes I really get it with the composition. Sometimes I miss it. So it's nice to have that feedback, especially so close to home, which is awesome. Anyway, QQQ from Lori. How many layers will you use on the mountain? Do you let it dry between layers? So again, with the smaller panels, and Laura, you would have seen this in the landscape course, but with some of these smaller paintings, it's basically 2 layers with a glazing layer over the top and maybe some very fine details, but it's primarily 2 layers. But generally, yes, I do let these go completely dry. And that's mainly because of just how long it takes me and the nature of alkyd resin. Alkyd resin, this will dry overnight. It'll be touch dry, not completely through dry, but touch dry overnight. And so I'll be able to work back over the top of that the very next day, and it will continue to cure, even though it's not dry all the way through. But I could layer over the top of this with some dry brushing techniques, maybe some atmosphere, maybe pull out a little bit more of that texture. So a really good question, but I'll make sure that I answer that. But yeah, I think I have answered that. So yeah, I will let it dry between those layers. But again, that's just because it takes me so dang long to do these things. But one thing's for sure, and back to Jason, you know, sometimes we're in a rush to get it done, right? We're in a rush to create these paintings and get it out as quickly as possible. But slow and steady, slow and steady. The only reason I get anything done is because I'm able to put in a lot of hours and sustain my focus over a long period of time. Jason and anybody else who wants to smash it in their art business, let me recommend right now 3 books for you, okay? Number 1, Atomic Habits by James Clear, okay? Number 2, Deep Work by Cal Newport. Number 3, I forgot number 3. It was on the tip of my tongue. It was just poof. It'll come back to me. Number 3. There's one that I've listened to recently. What's it called? What's it called? I got to say, well, this wasn't one I'm thinking of, but 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. That's an absolute must. That's a game changer, that book. But Deep Work and Atomic Habits, they're phenomenal, phenomenal books. But Deep Work talks a lot about creating this kind of mental space where you're able to lock in and focus. And one thing you need as an artist is that deep work, that focus. And it's amazing in this day and age what a challenge that is, because everything is trained our brain to go, ooh, look at the squirrel. Ooh, got to do there. Oh, I'm scrolling now. You know, short attention span and massive dumps of dopamine. So we go for these short-term gratification, easy gratification, rather than sustaining the hard yards, that's where the real rewards lie, is in being able to just sustain focus over a long period of time. Most people can't sit still for like 15 seconds or whatever, you know? So if you're able to sustain focus over 5, 6, 7, 8 hours, yeah, take some breaks, but get right back in the zone. That's going to be a game changer for you. So anyway, hope that helps. QQQ, any advice on coming back from a kind of burnout from painting? Ollie, oh goodness, yeah. You know, we're going to have to talk about burnout as part of the Creator Activator course, the business course over on my academy. But let me give you my thinking on burnout right now, because yes, I have gotten burned out. I'm capable of burning out just like everybody else. Just get a quick drink. Burnout is a sign. Burnout's a sign that you might be focused on something that is not serving you. I'll explain what I mean. By the way, this is your friend, right here. There's something I tell my students all the time. Get 2 squares of paper towel, fold it in half, okay? Fold it in half again, fold it in half again, till you end up with a little booklet like this. Then that brush, lay that down in there, wipe off those bristles, and now there's the paint. Can't get you. I hold this in my hand while I'm painting. Now I've got a clean brush. I'm about to make a value shift and a little bit of a color change here. Here we go. Burnout. So this is something that we covered in the podcast when I talked to Joe Paquette. Did anybody catch that podcast? It was a little while ago, but Joe talks about this thing called the external versus the internal. I think about it in terms of motivation versus inspiration. When we're inspired or driven from within, we have fuel that will last us almost a lifetime. When we're motivated from the outside to do anything, we might be incredibly driven to do this, that, or the other, but it's short-lived. So if ever I'm feeling burnt out, I suddenly think to myself, I'm probably doing this for the wrong reasons. I'm probably thinking about, you know, let's say it was a commission, for example. I'm probably thinking about a monetary return on the end of this time that I'm investing here. Or, you know, maybe I've got my life a little bit out of balance right now and I'm not doing those other things that fill me up and help level me out. So right now I'm able to put in a ton of work without feeling that burnout and fatigue. How do I do that? I tap into my inspiration, what's within. I tap into my purpose, why I feel like I'm here. And that allows me to do things that most people would find really unpleasant, you know, like hours of computer work and sitting there like either editing video or writing tons of copy, or just spending the hours necessary in the studio creating the paintings. You know, sometimes it does get tedious. You know, it's not always loads of fun. Sometimes it feels like work. So how do you sustain that without getting burned out? My little trick is to tap into my inspiration. So what is it that's driving me from within? And if I can attach that to my sense of purpose, why I'm here, now suddenly that gave me all the fuel I needed. But if it's just for a monetary benefit or likes on Instagram or views on a video, then I know I'm not thinking about it right. I have a little policy this year, and this is something that I've been doing this year so far, and so far it's working beautifully for my mental health. And this has been something that's kept me from getting burned out. I'm not looking at the numbers. I don't look at the numbers anymore. I don't look at my analytics. I don't look at my growth. I don't look at how many subs I have. I'm not focused on that. I'm focused on giving and doing the best job I can do, and whoever shows up is whoever shows up. I'm just here to serve. I'm not here to go for those likes, views, or whatever. I've asked you to hit the like button so that maybe more people could see this, because I genuinely feel this taps into my sense of purpose of why I'm here. I'm here to help people get painting, you know, a bit like what Bob Ross did, right? But I'm here to get you creative, inspired, and painting. When you're doing that, I've done my job, I'm happy. So if I look at the numbers and I start focusing on that, that's when I start to feel the burnout, you know? But if I can just show up today, if I have the opportunity to show up today and serve in some way, man, I'm filled up. That's awesome. But a couple of other things that help me is I've got a pretty intense exercise regimen at the moment, and I eat insanely well. I really focus on my health. I don't have any substances that I'm hooked on or anything. Probably coffee. Okay, let's face it, a little bit too much coffee. All right, before my wife checks me here in the comment section, she's like, "You've had 3 coffees today." Not quite. I've only had 2 so far, okay? I'm about to have my 3rd. But there's nothing here that's really, and not that that hadn't been a problem before. You know, I've had my moments, but I know if I work out, if I sleep right, if I get enough sleep, if I have to have my routine just so, and then I'm able to show up day after day by having that routine. But I got to say this, one thing that really helps me from getting burned out is tapping into that purpose. I believe I get that purpose from above. My Father in heaven gives me that sense of purpose. And so every day, a good buddy of mine who was a bit of a mentor, sadly he's no longer with us, but he really encouraged me as he said, every day you got to give your Father in heaven the first fruits of your day. So just sit there, spend time in the Word, and give it over to Him, and then your day's set. And I tell you what, man, he was right. Now, I'm not trying to preach to you right now. You do you. That's just what works for me, okay? So that really helps as well. But burnout is huge. It's something that we're going to talk a bunch about on Tish Academy because you're not alone. There's a lot of people that go through burnout. A lot. Anyway. Yes, I do, Roxanne. Absolutely. Roxanne says, you also have Rachel behind you helping. Absolutely, I do. Blessed to have that. Nikki says, thanks, Tish. I go through some gnarly dishes while watching. been arting over other things lately and leaving the other necessities in life. Good to get that done. Now back to the studio. Excellent, excellent. Tamara says, you helped me, Andrew. Thank you. Awesome, Tamara. That's great. Detective says, speaking of health, check out the carnivore diet. Changed my life. My wife, anyone I've known, I've convinced to try. Detective, whilst I won't make this about diet or anything like that, I'm going to say right now, I'm right there with you. I've been so sick over the last year. I was getting comments all the time about, you're looking terrible, dude. But now, at this point in my life, I've never been in better health. I've never felt better in my freaking life, dude. And in the gym, I'm doing way more than I did in my early 20s. It's crazy. And I'm now like in my 40s. So go figure. But that's been a game changer for me. That's going to trigger some people. I get it. It's all good. You know, I used to be a vegan, you know, but I just can't do that anymore. So anyway, but again, this ain't what this is about. You do you. But just want to say, Detective, appreciate what you're saying there. All right. Oh, move painting back to the camera, please. Thank you. Sorry about that. I've been painting away here, and I too busy gas bagging. Happens in every live stream at least once. Appreciate your patience with me. That's awesome. So the shift here in value is only subtle, and I'm just going to work a little bit in here. It's just a touch more gray, a little bit of burnt umber, a little bit of burnt sienna. You probably saw how I mixed that because I was doing nothing but palette shot. Thank you for, thank you, Justice. Jen Callie, thank you, Jen. Yeah, I appreciate you pointing that out. I like that. Danielle said, hi, I use art to heal my shaky hands and speak my soul. Very good, Danielle. I love that. That's beautiful. I'd have to say, I think I really relate to that. One of my favorite things to do, though, is to do this plein air. Speaking of which, my buddy Samuel Earp and myself are going to be doing a plein air art tour here in New Zealand next year. The people who are going to find out about this first are going to be my Tish Academy members. We're making all the bookings and arrangements right now, but if that sounds like something you'd be interested in, then I'd head over to the Tish Academy and you'd be amongst the first to know. If you want to be out in the landscape painting with yours truly, and my buddy Samuel Earp, we'd love to have you on the tour. We're going to be hitting up some of the best landscapes that I have ever seen. I'm sure it's beautiful where you are, but I think that this is where God used all of his best ideas. Can I say that? It's hard to beat the New Zealand landscape. It is stunning. So we'll be painting stuff that looks pretty similar to this. I don't know that we'll hit this landscape in particular. We might. But we'll be painting in the South Island area and painting some epic mountains, rivers, streams, forests, lakes. It's going to be cool. So again, my Tisch Academy members are going to be the first to know about that. So if you ever wanted to paint alongside me, outside, in the elements, well, here's your chance. That's something that really, speaking to your soul, or speaking your soul, that's one thing that does it for me, is painting outside plein air. Love it. Absolutely love it. Question, do you know any colorblind painters? Jeremy, none. I've done lots of monochromatic work and I'm working on color theory. I see everything in values, but usually the wrong color. Tips? Jeremy, one of my favorite painters is a guy named Mark Tansey. Mark Tansey. T-A-N-S-E-Y. He's based in New York. I'm pretty sure he's still working. He's kind of a modern artist, but he does beautiful, huge monochromatic paintings, and he's an epic painter. I first saw and became aware of monochromatic paintings, as a younger man. I was looking at a lot of Frank Frazetta work, and he did some interesting monochromatics as well. Nothing wrong with painting monochrome. But in terms of having tips for somebody who has color blindness, I'm not sure. But it'd be really interesting to see how you perceive color. But I'm not sure if I'd be able to help in that regard. But I think if that's something that you're facing, then monochrome all the way. Check out Mark Tansey. Check out some of the monochromatic paintings by Frazetta, and maybe that'll inspire you. Is there a Pashad box you would recommend for first plein air painters? Cheers. Oh, goodness. I've used all sorts, but for a first time getting out there painting plein air, and you want to just get something cheap to just get started and get going, it's hard to go past a French box easel. I'm about to get a custom Pashad box from somebody here in the chat who's skipping work to watch this live stream. But shout out to Dan over there in Australia. He's going to send me one of his custom boxes to try out. I'm looking forward to trying this one. I love Alla Prima Pashad. That's something I've been using for years, made by Ben White. But yeah, I think if you're just starting off with, a French box easel will carry all of your gear, and it will also carry all your brushes, carry the panel, but it's got the legs built into it. It's not the best. It's a little rickety and wobbly, but it will get the job done. So maybe check that out. I'm actually, right now, you might not know this, but I'm painting right now on a French box easel that's got a couple of wedge blocks that are mounted to the back of this, and this is on the wall here. So it's something that I use all the time when working on smaller paintings, because on my wall easel, which is this huge kind of wall, if you've seen any of my posts, you'll notice there's horizontal railings all over the place. But on my wall easel, it doesn't have the ability to clasp a little painting, so I've basically jerry-rigged this thing so it will hold a little painting. I can just clip that to the wall easel. But I'm using the French box right now. I'd highly recommend it. Anyway, I'm not going to worry about the snow just yet. We've pretty much done the sky and the mountain. You can see how I'm just making those layers a little bit more, let's say, a little bit higher degree of complexity here. A little bit more refinement. Really helping. So let's go over here to a close-up view. There's just a little mark here that's kind of bothering me. I want to bring that value down to bring that edge of the mountain a bit further forward. Right. Now, what about this water, dude? What are we going to do here? I think I want to get some of this water in. I'm going to go well over time. In fact, I said it was just going to be for an hour. We are going way over time. I hope that's okay. If you got to go, you got to go. That's totally fine. But I'm going to keep working because I'm in the zone, and I want to get some of this water in here and see if we can make this a little bit more interesting. So I've got some rocks here that I'm not even going to pay attention to. This is one of the reasons I keep my block in relatively thin. So right here, there's not a lot of texture that I'm picking up. But the next layer, that's where the texture is, you understand? So the first layer, the block in, this is just really as smooth as I can make it. You know, a little bit of brushwork in there, but I try to feather out some of those brush marks so I don't have any of that really heavy texture. Unless I know that element's going to stay there, then I might add a bit more texture. But here, I'm going to be able to work across this without worrying too much about, you know, any texture distracting from some smooth water that we want to achieve. Now, I'm going to work in a bit of a weird way. I'm going to actually just block in the reflection of this water, but later I'm going to paint over that yet again to get some of those elements that are underneath the water. So I'm going to be working backwards here, but I want to just see visually, is this something that's going to work? So whatever's above our water is going to be reflected directly down into it. So before I move into those mountains, because we're looking at something that is elevated, if I project this plane out, where would that end up out here? Well, so where is the horizon line? If we're standing here almost at water's edge and we project that plane out, where would that horizon line? That's going to tell us so much. It's going to tell us what's going to start reflecting down in here. Because I think the reflection is going to start around there. So that much of the mountain's going to come down, which means just maybe some sky might touch in there, maybe not. We'll see. I'll play with it until it looks right. Also, I'll probably shift some stuff around. So I'm not going to be taking my reflection from the base there. It has to be the base of wherever the horizon would occur, because that is the plane. So we just extend the plane out to the edge of the mountain. That's the point at where it's going to reflect. All right. Is it hard to travel with oils on an international flight? Asks Robin. Not if you've downloaded the safety data sheet. Some airlines get a bit squirrely, and you might have a problem. Some airlines might say, okay, you have to put it in your carry-on. Other airlines will say, no, you have to check it in your luggage. So just check with the flight, check ahead of time. And by the way, when they say, and they ask you to declare, you know, do you have any paint? It's not paint. It's oil colors or artist colors. Now, what they mean by paint is, are you bringing a tin of Dulux weather shield on the plane? That's not okay, apparently. I don't know why, but I'm not allowed to. All right, let's get some darker color here. And let's start bringing in, and I will remember, I promise to remember to switch the camera back. But let's go ahead and get some dark color here. We've got some deeper value provided by burnt umber and ultramarine blue. That's as dark as we'll need. A hint of liquid original. Boom. Okay. Question from Daniel. How do you communicate the need to be constantly working at your craft to your partner? I struggle to balance my obsession with my personal life. Would really appreciate the guidance. Daniel, are you married? I think the only thing, is she still here? Is my wife still here in the chat? She knew what she was getting into. Let's just put it that way. I was a pretty intense guy when she met me, and that hasn't changed. I mean, just spare a thought for the poor woman, would you? You know what she's got to put up with? Seriously. She's got to put up with this art nerd all the friggin' time. I think she's probably just feels, and sighs this sigh of relief whenever I go to the studio now, because I'm not working in the house anymore. I'm down at the studio, which is away from my home. But that said, jokes aside, I think it does help to have somebody that does understand that you need to do what you need to do. And that this is something that is not only important for you, but it's a legitimate business that you're working on and you're providing as a result of this. If you're not in that position yet, that's okay. But as long as that's something that you're seen to be working towards, you know, it's not always easy. It's not always something that you know, it doesn't happen straight away. But I think the thing that's really helped me far out, we're going off the rails here in this live stream. This isn't really something I was prepared to talk about, but whatever. Go with the flow, right? But the thing that's always helped us in my marriage, you know, with Rachel is open, honest, two-way communication. You've got to communicate what your needs are. And really, you know, we're there in that marriage to serve one another, you know, and to be a blessing to one another and to honor one another. And so that love, that blessing, that respect is so important. And so one thing that I try to do is be that provider and that father and husband that I'm supposed to be. And as long as I'm actually genuinely contributing and working to make this life possible for my family, I don't have any issues at all. Yeah, that's probably as much as I can say on that. I'm not a relationships expert, but this is how I provide. Other people have to go away to work. This is just me going away to work. You know, and there are other people out there that work much harder than I do and put in way more hours than I do. But any entrepreneur, anybody who runs their own business will tell you that it takes a level of intensity and energy that probably goes far above and beyond your standard 40-hour work week. You know, that to me sounds like a holiday. That sounds like I'd be working part-time if I was only doing 40 hours a week. At the moment, I'm looking at around 12-hour days, but I do take an hour in the middle of the day just to go home, have lunch, play with my son, be there for my wife and my son, and so that's nice. It's a really nice way to break up the day. So I'd have to say I'm probably working about 10 to 11 hours, 6 days a week, around there. So yeah, it's a lot. It's not that it's not a challenge. It is. Interesting question. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about that, but. Where is the focal point? That's where the horizon meets, says Jackal. That's interesting point. Where's the focal point? You mean vanishing point? Vanishing point? And that's kind of interesting. So here it's difficult. If you don't have a landscape with straight lines, like a barn, a building, or whatever, we could triangulate that onto the horizon and find that point. It'll be difficult to see. But I think, sorry, I got the hiccups. I think it's somewhere, to me it feels pretty high. And it would be around head height. So the next thing I'd like to think is, if I had a figure standing here at that boulder at the edge of the rock, I think that this would be about human height right there, that rock there. So I'm going to project that horizon as being through there. But so far, even though I've just put in a couple of rocks here, I'm actually kind of digging where this is going. Let me get onto the other camera here, zoom out a little bit, and we'll get a less distorted angle, shall we? Yeah, I'm going to go to the top of the hour, so about another 15 minutes. I hope you've enjoyed yourself here today on this live stream. Again, if you haven't done so already, hit that like button for me. It'll help this get out there to more people, and they could listen to the rambling, this rambling stream of consciousness in the replay. Be like, what is this dude on? But I'm an open book, so whatever you ask me is what I'm going to answer, I guess. I hope it helps, that's all. Daniel says, thank you. That was really helpful. Reminder to stay focused. I'm not at the point where I can provide yet. I know things will be different. I really appreciate that. Okay, no worries, Daniel. Yeah, no worries. Hey, greetings from Poland. Hey, greetings from New Zealand. Hey, Griffins, how are you? Right. Okay, so Raphael has got something to say here about paint. You put them in a box, you label them with the safety sheet from the manufacturer. Very good. You can transport anything not flammable. So oils are okay, but solvents and alkyd are not. Yes, okay, very good. Yeah, I don't travel with my Liquid Original on the plane, although I have in a little tiny mustard jar, but you know, I got away with it. But the oil paints, I haven't really had an issue with that, not on Air New Zealand. I've mainly been flying just internally here in New Zealand. So you'll be okay with that, I think. But yes, safety data sheet from the manufacturer, that is quite important. I'm pretty certain that Blue Ridge has one on their website, in case you were wondering. Okay, so I'm knocking my brushes over. You're going to be a problem. I'm just going to put you over there. There we go. I'm going to take some of that mountain color that we were using, and it's not exactly the right color, but we're also looking down at this pond. So those rocks are going to be reflecting, but those mountains in the background are going to be reflecting. And that rock, I'm going to keep that rock. That's going to be reflecting. That's cool. So if I'm taking my reflection from that point up, where would that come to? I think it'd be cutting a line about like that. Now already this is kind of cooling down the composition and I'm digging it. If it's not quite making sense to your eye just yet, that's okay. There is madness in my method. Now if you're enjoying this live stream, if you're getting something out of this, I do this every single week with my Academy members. Every week. And we talk about a whole bunch of different stuff. We talk about portrait painting. We talk about landscape painting. We do some drawing sometimes. But it's always good fun. It's always informative. In fact, right now, let me just call upon my members. And there are a ton of Tisch Academy members here in the live chat. I didn't pay anybody to say what they're about to say, but I'd just like to honestly ask them, what are you thinking of your experience so far on Tisch Academy? Hit me up in the comments right now if you're a Tisch Academy member, and let the good people know what you're getting out of it so far. Please be gentle. But this has become something that I'm very passionate about. I love the Academy. I love the community that we've built. And it's really the people that are part of that exclusive community that makes it so special. It's that we have a really tight group of people that are just dedicated to their craft. And they really want to get better at painting, and it's awesome being around people who are so inspired, so driven, and like-minded. It's awesome. That's a good one. Nick says, what about the old trick of turning the painting on its side to see where the reflection would occur? You can do that, but I'm just going to draw the line straight down here. I know that's where the peak is going to be. It's going to be obscured, though, somewhat by that this shoreline that's right here. So I've actually got a shoreline that I've put right in that way. So I'm only going to get a little bit of sky out here at this corner. Erlinda says, I've learned so much. I love it. Awesome. Academy live stream is the best. It makes it very special. The Academy is so much more than any mentorship or workshop I've taken over the decades, says Lori. Thank you, Lori. Jen says, love the Academy. So informative and accessible. The people are the best. Awesome. Oh, thank you. Wade says he learned something new in every video. Awesome. Awesome. Amazing, mate. In 1 month, I've learned more than I did in 1 year of art school. Thank you, Dan. That's awesome. So there you go. Check out the chat and really appreciate it. And again, I'm not paying anybody to say this stuff, but this is something I'm really passionate about. And the reason it's such a big deal for me is that, you know, when I was coming up, I didn't have access to this. So I've really tried to create the art school that I wanted when I was coming up. And we're getting there. I think we've done it. And again, it's not just me, it's the people that are there that make it so awesome. So there's places where you can post your work, you can comment on other people's work, you can message and chat with each other, you can take part in group challenges, and you can follow along with well over 200 hours now of painting video content there in the content library. It's huge. All right, I'm going to add a little bit of sky to this. And here we go. I think right there, that rock, I should have gone a little bit further, shouldn't I, with that? And just, I painted up to the edge of the rock. I didn't need to do that. Now, I might adjust this a little bit. It might be slightly off, but one thing I did want to see is how would that color look in here if I just added a bit of this to the scene. So we're going to have that mountain come down, and then right here, this is starting to look very similar to something I painted out near Sutherland Falls in the South Island. There's a video on my YouTube channel that you'll be able to find where I was painting. We got access to the landscape via helicopter, and that was an amazing painting experience. But I was painting a tarn from way up in the mountains. This is starting to get a little bit of that vibe. Bring back a couple of memories. Yeah, don't get fired, Dan. Wade says he's been with Andrew here with long hair and no hair. I've had many different hairdos, Wade, haven't I? Many different hairdos. I think I paint more the more aerodynamic I am. I paint a lot better and faster now than I ever have. And the really nice thing is not having to worry if I'm going to have a good hair day or a bad hair day. Every day is a bad hair day. So I don't even need to think about it now. It's great. You want to shave your head after you get married, by the way? That's recommended. And on my 500 subscriber celebration video, which I put out last year, I didn't tell my wife I was going to do this. I just basically walked into the kitchen and I'm like, surprise! And it was a genuine reaction that I filmed there. So if you want to see that and have a good laugh, then check that out. All right. And then that mountain will come down there and reflect. But basically we've got the shape down. So there's something with these tarns and also water that's just rich with tannins. You know, it's got this rich red color, right? So to add a little bit of that, I normally like to use transparent red oxide, but here I'm going to use a little bit of raw sienna and burnt sienna, mix that into my shadow color, just a hint of that, just to get that kind of, it's going to be a crystal clear little tarn here, but it's going to be like a tea color. But where these rocks are reflecting, I'm going to have a bit of that earthy tea color coming through. And then we'll work on that mirror reflection and just chip away at it. But I can kind of get a sense now if this painting's going to work. I think it's going to work. I'm much happier with a little bit of this. Also, because we've got such a high sun angle, we might just get a little bit of sparkle in that water. And if ever I get an opportunity to paint some sparkles, oh goodness. So good. It just adds a little kick of light and life to your painting. Makes it really special. So I'm not really bothered by any of that deeper, that magenta color. You can see it's kind of blending in with some of the sky colors. And because we used plenty to do that mountain there in the distance, just fine. Gary says, I shaved my head once. My wife asked me not to do it anymore. Ross says we could start a cult, cue ball artists. Great. Always wanted to be a cult. No, I didn't want to be a cult leader. No, stop that. I'm not going there. Promise Tisch Academy is not a cult. Promise. So add a little bit of darker tone here where we've got a collection of rocks at the other end of this tarn. Which might mean that if we got some rocks there with some depth of shadow there, it might get a couple of highlights in there just to see if this is going to work. So I've used all my favorite daggers, haven't I? Do I have another dagger? Yeah, we could use this one. There we go. Let's mix up some highlight color for these rocks. We'll get a little bit of titanium white, a little bit of Kremnitz white here. Balsam says, we're weird, but we're not a cult. Good. Speak for yourself, eh? I'm not weird. Okay, maybe I'm a little weird. I am a little weird. Yeah. All right. Wow. I'll tell you who had good hair. The painter with the best hair, I think, was Bob Ross. That guy had some good hair. Excuse me, I just had to mute myself while I coughed. Oh, goodness. Nothing worse than coughing on a live stream. It's truth. Oh, I forgot to change my friggin' camera back. There we go. Okay, there we go. Just a couple of rock highlights. I'm probably too high a value and too warm. And let's see, we got any rocks that look kind of similar in my reference. I'll use that as a bit of inspiration. And we'll get these forming almost a bit of a slope coming down to our new water edge. But because that doesn't dip away now, it feels a little more plausible. So that there would be a rock. That would be a rock. There's a rock. Another one there. Now I'll come back later and I'll detail all of these just to make sure we've got the right shape. that I like the texture, the way the light's clinging to the form, that it feels three-dimensional. We just want to get a general indication, where's the highlight going to go, where's the shadow going to go, and how are these masses going to look in this water here, now that we've redefined, completely changed this scene, but redefined our edge here. And also, I might get into a little trouble here where I've got too many even rocks around the edge. That can happen too. But I won't make a decision just yet. I might later just go, okay, I'm going to nail those two and allow the green to come down to the water just to make sure I don't have rock, 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 like some landscape gardener came in here and was trying to do an even job around the edge of this artificial pool. We want it to look as natural as possible. To have a good composition, but also not to be too composed. And I think we're close on this little painting session. That's going to be a rock too. It's going to be a rock there. Rocks have various values in them. Correct. PS, correct. Right now what I'm doing is I'm just blocking in the just two, basically, just creating them with two tones at the moment. Just a lighter tone where the light's going to be shining off the front of these, and then a bit of a deeper tone where the shadow is going to occur. But that's just about done it, I think. And now I can see clearly that this has got some potential. And again, what I've gone over the top with here is a little bit thinner, so not too much texture there. So if I can shift these around later, then that could work. All right. Just a couple more marks because it's bothering me. I've gone well over time. I was only going to go live for 1 hour. Here I've gone live for 2. Once I get in the zone, I'm in the zone, and I just like to stay in the zone. So if you're watching now live, if you're here now with me, I appreciate it so much. If you're watching the replay, if you're one of those future people watching the replay, then I appreciate you spending this time with me here in the studio. It's been awesome. Really enjoyed your company here. Really, thank you so much for all the amazing questions. I hope I was able to answer your question. If not, no worries. I will be doing another live stream here at some point very soon. I might even go ahead and schedule that this week or next, so you'll know when to anticipate that. I was going to be doing this live a lot sooner, but I had to kick it back a week because I had something come up that I needed to attend to. So apologies for that if you were waiting here last week, but I had to just change the time. So let me just, I'm in the zone. I'm in the zone. I can't leave because I'm in this zone. Just work up to that edge. A little bit ambiguous there, but we'll work that out. Now, one of the things that helps me sometimes is to get up out of the stool and look at this from a distance. Whenever I'm looking at it from distance, I can go, okay, is this going to work? Is it not going to work? What needs to change here? You know, is this going to give me everything, you know, that I need? And I'm already seeing there's some things that I want to do with a bigger final version, because I think this idea really has some legs. So there's some things I want to do in that version, but I might talk to you about that in the next one. My Academy students will see this when this gets finished off for one of the modules. Speaking of which, allow me to just take a quick minute and tell you about Tisch Academy. Now, don't go anywhere. Let me tell you something right now. Tisch Academy, this has been something that I've been working on for the last 4 years. It started off on Patreon, but now it's its own independent website. Think about it like art school. If you've ever wanted to go to art school, develop your skills and techniques, but you don't want to dedicate that kind of time, like a year, and lock into all that course structure, and not to mention the expense, then this might be the thing that you're looking for. For just a little bit each month, and there's 2 different tiers here. You can start off at the studio tier at $5 a month, or the full shebang, the academy tier at $18 a month. That's well under $1 a day. You can be learning some pretty amazing stuff right now on Tisch Academy. So what have we got? We've got critique videos, we've got live streams, we've got courses available, we've got so many different tutorials on all these different projects, and the video library is getting added to constantly. And not only that, but you get to take part in an exclusive community. I don't want you to take my word for it about how awesome this is. It's amazing. I'm going to say that right now. I think we've built something incredible. Try it for 7 days for free on me. If you don't like it, no worries. You don't have to sign up, but just try it for 7 days. I think you'll love it, and you'll see why I'm so passionate about this. And so many others here who have been with you here in the live chat are also really enjoying themselves on Tisch painting. So I'm here to do whatever I can to share with you everything I've got so you can really take your skills up a notch when it comes to painting portraits, landscapes, still lifes, all kinds of different things. We talk about it. So if that sounds like you, then check it out. You can go to that link right there, tisch.academy. It's on the screen right there that you can see. And also, if you just Google that one, you'll find it. And I think that's it. And if you had any business questions, by the way, this is something we've just started to add to, and I've been updating the library on the Creator Activator course, which is a business course for artists. So this will really help you supercharge your art career if you're thinking about making those moves to go pro. All right, that's all I had to do for my little plug here at the end, but thank you so much for spending this time with me here in the studio. I'll go ahead and I might leave that on the screen here. Highly recommend. Love Tisch Academy, says Ash. Thank you so much. Thank you, Tamara. Awesome. Worth $18. Nothing touches it, says Gary. Okay, I've missed a question from Hassan. I beg your pardon, Hassan. I will try to get to that at another point. You can always hit me up through my website and also on Instagram, Hassan. If you've got a question, you can reach me there, and I check all my DMs. So, okay. I'm going to get out of here. I might even carry on with painting. I think it's time for some more caffeination first, though, okay? I think that's in order. But, hey, thank you so much. Thank you for spending this time with me here in the studio. I've really, really enjoyed your company. And I will see you again very soon in another live stream or another YouTube video. We got another YouTube video about to drop next week. Uploads are happening again. It's pretty cool being back in this zone. Okay, thanks so much. It's been fun. I'll see you again soon.